Well, hey friends, what's up, Red Letter Disciples? It's Zach Zender, the host of the Red Letter Disciple, a podcast to help you be a greater follower of Jesus, a greater disciple. And so we've had so many great conversations this season, been very Lutheran Church Missouri Synod focused, and are really trying to steward this platform, this podcast, to be a podcast that helps the most amount of people become greater disciples. And so pretty soon here shortly, I'll be sharing more on what's coming in the future of Red Letter Disciple. But before we get to that, let me tell you about today's guest. It is Richard Snow. He is the Nebraska district president, my district president. So we're going to talk to him about what it's like to be in that office. How many fires do district presidents really have to put out? How do we handle conflict well? And what every pastor ought to be focused on in the next 10 years. I want to thank today our sponsor, Red Letter Living. We create resources that, again, try to help you produce greater disciples at your church. Giving Challenge is our brand new 40-day challenge. It not only comes with a book, but 2 books, because we have a kids book, because we believe kids are super generous too and want to teach them those principles at an early age. For 40 days, people will get into the words of Jesus and learn from the Master himself, the one who is our Lord, our Savior, our model, and our example. And as they get into this 40-day journey, and as they practice the rhythms of generosity that these books will challenge them, that Jesus' words will challenge them to do, they're going to find it really is more blessed to give than to receive. And so individuals are going to jump into joy, and what that's going to mean for churches that go through this challenge is it's going to result in more generosity than I'm hoping you've ever dreamt possible for your people. Imagine generous people not only fueling the God-sized vision that you have today, but then impacting a lifelong journey of their own discipleship where they grow in their generosity year over year over year. So, hey, if that sounds like something that your church might be interested in, go to redlettergiving.com. We are piloting it right now in about 30 congregations and hearing really great stories. And we know it's going to do great things in your church. And so it can do that already. And so check it out at redlettergiving.com. And if you haven't yet, it's the last episode of season 9. Would you please rate, review, follow, and subscribe, so that way we can get this podcast out to even more people to produce even more greater disciples of Jesus. So let's get to today's episode with Richard Snow. Let's do this. We have got a great episode of Red Letter Disciple today, bringing the Reverend, the district president, Richard Snow, onto the podcast. He has served as an advisor to the church workers of the Nebraska district, the greatest state in the nation, by the way.
There you go.
He served in parish ministry and visits congregations and church workers in times of celebration and difficulty, and super honored to serve alongside of him in our Nebraska district. So, President Richard Snow, how are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on finally to the Red Letter Disciple. So you've just stepped out of a busy kind of convention season, district responsibilities. What's a joy recently that you've experienced in the Nebraska district that reminds you why all of this work matters? Every now and then I got to remember, why does this matter?
Well, I think 2 things kind of just pop off in terms of kind of the summer activity. One was the Lutheran Women's Missionary League. They had their national convention in Omaha, and I had the great honor to preach at their opening service. And just the joy and the gratitude of those gals and guys that were gathered for that convention. It was just such an amazing convention. It was just a ton of joy and celebration and gratitude. I just can't tell you how many people afterward, it's like, oh, thank you for that message. I was like, I didn't think it was that good, but okay. So that was really just very affirming and gratifying. And then I think the most important work I do is the work of helping congregations find pastors. And so the celebration, whether it's ordinations or installations or both, to me, seeing that partnership of pastor and people, especially as kind of the excitement of that new partnership begins, that to me is that's our work is in the parish, right? I mean, it's in the local congregation where God is doing his stuff with word and sacrament. And so just celebrating those ordinations, installations is just a super joy for me.
Yeah, it's great. And we're gonna come back. I think that's such a big topic that we're facing in our day and age today is pastoral formation and how we're doing it and what we're doing well and what maybe we can improve. And
Sure.
but it is, yeah, I'm sure such a joy to get those pastors that serve and get them installed. And I know churches that have been waiting a long time, some of them. It's a big day. That's a big celebration day. So
Yep.
part
Cool.
of my this podcast has always been about how do we become greater disciples. This season particularly, I'm trying to bring a lot of different Lutheran voices for Lutheran Church Missouri Synod voices, because I really do think we're in a pivotal time right now of where do we go from here? How do we continue to walk together in a way that people enjoy walking together, if that's possible? And I think part of what I've learned in these conversations so far, and you're on the tail end of this season, is just that it's really great to hear kind of from different perspectives and to get into people's shoes a little bit, or to get into what their day-to-day looks like, and to have a little more empathy for one another. And so I'd love to do that kind of with you, with your role of district president, right? There are, is it 35 district presidents?
35. Yep.
35. I apparently annexed one in my mind for some reason. I'm not sure which one, but 35 of you that serve a very different but important role. And so tell us a little bit about what it is like to be in the day-to-day, or maybe it's different every day, the week-to-week shoes of Richard Snow.
Yeah, I think as in contrast to the local parish where you kind of have your weekly routine as you're, kind of that weekly cycle as you're going through, and then the church year, of course, working through, Advent, Christmas, Easter, all those kinds of things. In a district president role, everything is it's much more of a kind of a 3-year cycle instead of a one year cycle and a weekly cycle. I try to do a lot of visitation, visiting circuits, visiting congregations, visiting pastors. I just feel that's really kind of key. The big difference, of course, in the parish, I knew, kind of a few people very, very, very well.
Yeah.
Here I meet a lot of people and don't really have the chance for some of the deeper relationships. So that's, I think, a little bit of a challenge with this role. I do a lot. I spend a good portion of my time building call lists and, again, helping congregations look for their next pastor. I spend a fair amount of time just in terms of the thinking about how to help kind of living out the strategic plan, which for us is healthy workers, healthy congregations, healthy districts. So really trying to build communication with pastors and other church workers, trying to help guys connect or workers connect. Ministry can be kind of isolating for a lot of guys, especially. Some guys kind of just automatically connect kind of on a more friendship level with folks. Other guys kind of struggle with that more. So there's some isolation, marriage challenges, all those things. And so spent a lot of time kind of really thinking about how are we strengthening those primary relationships of marriage, parenting, deep friendships, trying to help congregations think about what can they do to kind of take a next step in being kind of more proactive in ministry. Yeah. So I think those are some of the things that are a part of my role as district president.
That's cool. So I have a kind of a unique role at King of Kings here in Omaha, where we're a multi-campus church. And so there's a kind of a central team, if you will, that is the role of central is to support the local campus work. And then there's campus directors at each one of these sites. And as the multi-site director, I kind of oversee and hold those campus directors accountable. But I oftentimes find myself in the middle a lot, right? You have these two entities, central and then campus. And so I'm kind of seeing that ish for your position, and maybe to try to help understand your position. This is a question to kind of frame it, is like a lot of times I feel like both like love each other, want to help each other. Central wants to support campus, but sometimes the things that Central does maybe isn't best for campus to practically or whatever.
Sure.
And so I feel at times I'm kind of like the one in the middle that's got to be kind of talking to each side, and that can be challenging. Is that a big part of your role? Or talk to me about kind of the local level that you are involved with, but then also there's the national synodical level as well. What does that look like for you to be that person for the Nebraska district?
Yeah, I would say I spend far more time and far more energy really trying to help the local congregation, because that really is, again, my understanding of the church is everything happens on the ground. And so the challenge of some of the synodical challenges are kind of outside my control and grasp anyway. So it's like I do try to bring influence to that as as we meet together as a council of presidents, as I try to advise President Harrison. And I mean, and again, that's kind of the work of the COP. He is advising us as district presidents. We're trying to advise him as synodical president. That really is kind of the bylaw fundamental of what we do. But most of the time I really see that the greatest impact that I can have on the local parish through the local pastor, the administrators of our schools, teachers, DCEs. So I spend, of course, Bob Ziegler is our education exec. So he's primarily the one working with our commissioned workers, the DCEs and principals and teachers. My main focus is on the pastors, because that's where I think if I can help encourage them, equip them, figure out ways to empower them, that's really, I think, the most important piece of that. There is some of that where I kind of get caught in between, and then I will have to do a little more, let's see, how do I say that without making it sound wrong? There are times where I kind of have to go to battle, right? I mean, I have to go to bat for the parish and say, whether it's the seminary or, the council of presidents, and say, this is what this congregation needs. And so how do we make that happen? And I've just been emailing back and forth here recently with a kind of an ethnic ministry that we're trying to support and encourage, and just trying to say, okay, how do we make this work? Because right now we got to do something to help that congregation move forward in their mission field.
Yeah, that's good. And also super, challenging to figure out in those times, because, you've got, your voice that's representing one side and your voice is representing the other side. And you're kind of stuck in the middle, and people are waiting on you for, X, Y, or Z. And it's like, I'm trying.
Right. Yeah. Well, the same thing is true on the local level, right? There are times where I have to kind of speak more for the pastor in a parish, and there are times where I have to really also, so my job is really to support congregation and worker. And so there are times where that is a conflicted situation, and I have to try to discern kind of how to help both at the same time, recognizing that sometimes those they're not always a congruent answer, I guess.
Yeah. How much, like, I know, okay, so there's some celebrations, there's some installations, there's, things that you're doing kind of scheduled, but also, strategic to bring the health of the church workers and the congregations up. When I think of district presidents, and maybe it's largely because it's when I run into them, I feel like they are putting out a lot of fires. If that makes sense. And so how much because we are one church body walking together, but how we walk in each local context may be a little different. Even though we're subscribed to the same sort of central things, how that's lived out looks different in one context than the other. So what part of your job, like what percentage of it would you say is putting out fires?
Well, I think Probably far fewer than people might think.
Okay, so I just give you more fires than the average
There you
person.
go. There you go. Well, yeah, you guys do your best to,
Keep you on your
to, to,
toes.
to, to give me something to work on. Um, the, there are, there are very few situations where I'm putting out fires, between congregations. Um, that there might be an hour or two in a given month,
Okay.
where
Yeah.
that's something where I've got to put energy. Um, and really, even again, kind of congregational conflict where it's a worker congregation conflict, I, on average, have maybe one or two going on, at the same
At any
time.
given time. Yeah.
And now, oftentimes, that will consume a fair amount of time.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of times it's, I'm made aware of it, then I don't usually just jump into it myself. I can't, I don't have time for it, first of all, but, I'm not in that place. So that's really where my circuit visitors,
Yeah.
carry the yeoman's, uh, task with all that. They really, so right now, there's one situation really in all of Nebraska, 231 congregations. There's only one situation where the circuit visitor's got to do some
Hmm.
pretty intense reconciliation. He's keeping me aware.
Yeah.
He's sharing what he's learning. I advise him on some stuff, but a lot of that kind of in the trenches work is done by the circuit visitor. Um, they're really they're really the godsend for the work of the church.
Yeah.
Guys who really have a heart for helping and then trying again to find that discernment piece. So again, I would say if you're talking about hours, I probably spend maybe a couple hours a week
Mm.
working with a fire.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's not a huge
I
piece
think
of the
that's kind of
puzzle.
encouraging because I think the narrative and one of the things we did this past summer at Red Letter is we put out a survey to Lutheran leaders just to we knew we were having these conversations on the podcast, but I wanted some objective data to hopefully ask informed quality questions that came from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the narratives and also seen in the data is that there's so many disagreements and so much division in our church body right now. And it's really frustrating. And so that's actually somewhat encouraging for me to hear from you that it's not actually all consuming for your position. Because I would just think the more that happens, the more that kind of filters up, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so what I rarely hear, like when there's if there's one member who's having conflict with their pastor. I mean, the pastor might talk about it to get some advice, but most of those, that's really where most of the conflict is in kind of in the local parish.
Mm.
On a national level, somebody's always fighting. I mean, there's just always somebody that's angry about something.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, to be honest, I just don't own it. It's, that's, you can be mad about something, but unless you're actually going to go directly and confront it, that's probably my biggest frustration is the lack of communication. We just don't have guys they'll complain about it, on a blog or, so,
Yeah.
but they won't actually go to the person that they're struggling with. And that's, or they'll complain about it and say, why doesn't the district president do anything about this? Well, how do you even know the district president knows anything about this?
Right.
You're accusing him of something that he may not even be aware of. It's not
Yeah.
like I sit and watch everybody's, webcast or, listen to every blog that's out there. I
All
actually have a
231 services each week, right?
It's like,
Every service, because it's a little different this time, at the 11 o'clock than the 9 o'clock.
right. So, yeah, I don't, I spend very little time on social media. I mean, I look at Facebook once every 2 weeks just to see if somebody messages me. And beyond that, I just don't have the time or the energy to to spend a lot of time. I like to watch the baseball recaps just so I can see how the Red Sox and the Royals are doing. But beyond that,
There you go. How are they doing this year?
yeah, the Red Sox are trying to make it back, and the
Okay.
Royals have actually they've got a pretty good winning record here the last
Nice.
since the All-Star break. They've actually been doing pretty well.
There you go. That's cool.
But
So
Detroit is killing us in the Central.
I know. Yeah, I'm a Cleveland guy, and it's lights are, I think, pretty much. They're not out, but they're geez, on its last hour of energy. But anyway, our data in that survey kind of showed members, leaders, like kind of equally worried about internal division within the LCMS and also kind of external cultural pressures that we're facing around us. What do you see as kind of the bigger threat in the seat that you sit in?
Oh, definitely internal, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, certainly, the challenges of our society, the disregard and, animosity sometimes toward faith is a real issue. I wouldn't deny that, but I would say, just looking at it scripturally, I mean, the letters of John, it's like, okay, you got to, the world is going to look at how you're loving one another. And if you're not loving one another, and that doesn't mean everybody's happy and, everything's picture perfect on Facebook, right? But but our inability, our attitude toward one another far too often reflects the divisiveness of our society rather than the unity that Scripture calls us to. And I mean, that means there are times where we're not walking together, and that needs to be discussed. But how you talk to one another and how you approach one another, and or even not approaching one another and just throwing crap out on the internet. I mean, that's what's, I think, much more of a danger to the church.
Yeah. So from your perspective, I think it's a unique vantage point. Then what are like some healthy ways that we can, I suppose, disagree or maybe have really important conversations? Like, how do we do that for those that are frustrated? Because I see and I hear a lot of that frustration, for across the board from kind of both sides, if you will, in our church body. And I just want to know how we can do that in healthy ways.
Yeah, I think the phrase that I will often say is, we can't walk together if we don't talk together, and we can't talk together if we don't meet together. So that's why I think the circuit is such an important piece of our synod. It really is, I think, the foundation of our walking together. And so are we meeting with the guys that are right next to us and listening to their concerns? The cliche is, you got two ears and one mouth, use them proportionally. And so I think the challenge for us, again, we actually need to talk directly to one another. If there's something that we see that's going sideways, then that needs to be addressed directly. I mean, there are synodical provisions where, you can talk to your district president and he'll talk to the other district president and that district, but that becomes pretty contorted if that's not where we start.
Yeah.
It's Matthew 18. It's just, or Matthew 5, right? If your brother has something against you, go to him. If you have something against your brother, go to him, right? Those are the simple aspects. And especially in today's world, it's not like communication, isn't available.
Right.
I mean, obviously face to face in person is far more preferable. But, even if you have to take a plane ride, it's not that hard to go somewhere and talk face to face and actually deal with stuff. And then, again, if you don't feel like you're being heard or whatever, then let's bring in a couple other people to be a part of that conversation. Too often, those folks that are frustrated haven't really they don't know the whole thing, right? I mean, they don't know the whole story. They may see, again, one snippet on the internet, and then just kind of and totally lose their cookies on that whole thing. And it's like, well, you don't know the whole context of where this is going and where this is what's happening. So how do you listen? How do you seek to understand first? I mean, it's this is
Basic.
these are pretty basic, scriptural concepts, right? Looking to understand, where's the log in my eye versus the speck in the other. I mean, these are, that doesn't mean things don't need to be addressed. They do need to be addressed. There's stupid stuff out there that shouldn't happen. And so, those things do need to be addressed. But if I thought I was doing something wrong, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
What I'm doing, I think I'm doing right.
Right.
So if I'm not doing it right, yelling at somebody else about me or just yelling at me isn't going to help me. How do I, restore them gently, I think it says again, right? I mean, those are just easy. Those are simple Christian or scriptural concepts, but they are just our emotionality and our reflection of society is just not healthy for the church.
Yeah, and I think that what you said was so good is when we start acting more like our society, which is showing very unhealthy ways to handle conflict, when that's kind of become our norm as opposed to kind of sticking in our relationship with Christ and how we know we're called to act, like there's a problem there. And it needs to be addressed. And I do think, just walking together, like you said, talking together and meeting together is so important, because when you talk and you meet, you actually get to hear, like you said, the context. And I think, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think it was a good thing is probably more especially true. Like I wouldn't have done it in public. Like most of the stuff that
I sure wouldn't have put it on tape.
Yeah. Most of the stuff that I think we'd argue about is not our private lives, because we really don't know what's going on in each other's private life, but especially our public lives. Like we probably have thought that through and have some. And now again, can we go sideways? Can our thinking be wrong and us do something public in a way that wasn't 100%? But also, like, come talk to me, or let's talk to each other if there's something that looks off, because there's probably some greater reasons or underneath it all. And so, what do you say? Because this podcast and the work that we do with Red Letter Living has kind of allowed me to obviously still be very involved at a local church, but also kind of have a greater involvement, if you will, in our capital C church, especially in our church body, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And so, I do deeply care about our synod. I'm a fourth generation Lutheran Church Missouri Synod pastor. And I say that with pride, but also with a little bit of fear, because I'm looking and I'm talking to my dad, and it's like, this is not the same LCMS today than it was one generation ago. And when we're struggling with something, or when we have, let's say, our own answers for how we would do X, Y, or Z if we were the president of the denomination, what am I not understanding that the president of the synod has to deal with? What do we not know about his office that would create more understanding, empathy, and maybe even trust in the office? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because it's easy to just on the side say, well, I would do this and he should do this, right?
Right. Sure. Right.
That's easy to say,
Right.
Easy to do, and easy to post, and easy to write a blog on it.
Yeah. So, and again, recognize, I guess, prefacing the fact that I don't have the job, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know fully.
Sure.
What I do know is we've really placed a burden on that office that is unsustainable. I mean, here, you're charged with overseeing all the missions going on in all the nations around the world. You're charged with, all the programming, for synod. You're charged with, trying to coordinate universities and auxiliaries and seminaries, and I can't even begin to wrap my head around how many spinning plates are a part of this. And so it is not a simple duty. It is not an easy office, and I would say really it's not a sustainable. We're asking that position to do more than is possible for a human being. Now, obviously, you've got people that are responsible for, underneath you to, they're responsible for all that. And you can do your best to put the right people on the right seat of the bus. But that doesn't mean everybody's going to always be acting in the way you would act. They don't always have the same decisions. Now you have to kind of trust them and let them do their work. But again, it's really just incomprehensible, the challenges of that office. I mean, I have some of that as a district president. When Brian Friedrich was still here at Concordia, and now that Bernard Bull is here, it's like, I gotta go, I have one of the worst jobs in Synod, but yours is worse than mine. just kind of the size of the budget and all the moving parts of a university. Seminaries are the same way. And you just kind of ratchet it up to Synod president, where it's just like, man, if you think you want that job, run, because it is just got to be a nightmare trying to oversee all those different pieces of the puzzle.
I think that's fair to think about, in obviously all of our own contexts are different, but thinking about, even my own situation, when you have a hat to wear as a husband, a father, and a pastor, and in my world, author, speaker, podcaster, keep adding them on, like the more you add, like the easier it is for each one of those to get 80 or 70% of me. Mm-hmm. And that's not healthy. And so I suppose if it's not a sustainable model or office as is, how do we make it sustainable so that it's not so? Because that's part of one of the issue from the data pieces that came up, that was one of the challenges voiced from the 1,054 Lutheran leaders that responded to my survey, was there's too much power, too much leadership power concentrated at the top. And so how do we make it less, I don't know, one person focus or less office focused, and so that it's more sustainable?
Yeah, I don't, well, first of all, I think there's far less power in the office than people would give it credit. Okay. The board of directors of Synod has a huge amount of authority, and while you would, I mean, you certainly hope that they're working in tandem, that doesn't mean they are. Yeah. Because you've got strong leaders. I mean, you have with the 35 district presidents. Right. We don't all agree. We don't all work the same. The districts themselves are vastly different. Some of our districts are less than 70, 80 congregations. I have 231, and I'm like 10th largest. So there's so much. There's so many different levels of authority along the way, that one person just doesn't control it all. Now, there is certainly a lot that the synodical president does control. I think I've talked to a couple other leaders, and like, okay, do we need one who's the ecclesiastical supervisor, one who's the business CEO kind of a thing? Um, it's it's one thing to oversee the national missions. It's another to see the international missions. And again, we have directors for all those things. But there's no way the synodical president can oversee
Yeah.
all the details in all those areas. And there probably is, I think our bylaws tend to centralize. The more we struggle with the diversity of our synod, the more over the last, especially 15 to 20 years, this isn't just current administration, right? This is the
Right.
last 3 administrations. Over that time, more and more authority has been given in a centralized way. And I think that too is a part of our challenge, because again, one person can't possibly know. I mean, just the prior approval process. I mean, you can't know all the things you need to know in those processes. You don't know the people individually. You can see some stuff on a sheet of paper, but you can't have detailed grasp of all those things. And so I think that's really where the more we can divest into local areas, the better. Again, while maintaining accountability, because as district president, I can't just do whatever I want either, right? I mean, I think I have authority, but everyone's a man under authority, I guess, as Jesus would say, right?
Yeah.
And so, how do we deal with that?
And part of the answer might be in the survey data. There was a really low percentage of confidence in national leadership, but about triple the percentage of confidence in regional district leadership. And so maybe the question I'd like to ask it this way is, what can national leadership learn from what regional or district leadership is doing? Because clearly there's more confidence in that than there is in top leadership. And I know I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm saying that's what the
I hear what you're saying. I
don't want to speak for even my voice or any, but this is, So is there something though that is happening at district or regional level that we can implement at national level that might be more beneficial for us?
Well, I don't know why people responded the way they did. But my conjecture would be, if you were answering that question, you would have more confidence in me, but that's because we play golf together.
Right.
That's because, we've smoked a cigar together, but don't tell my wife. That's because, we have that relationship. Nobody can have a relationship with President Harrison. I mean, I shouldn't say that.
Many. Yeah.
There's diminishing relationship, the deeper the structure. And so you're going to have far more trust in your congregation and the, Griff and those, than you do in your circuit visitor, than you do in me. Right. So I think there's there's just, as you think of that ascending structure, trust diminishes each step of the way, especially if you don't see full congruency in how you see things and in how decisions are being made. Yeah. So I think that's a complicating fact. Now I would say, the answer I would come back to is, how then do we foster a greater communication to and fro, with our synodical leadership? How do we access at least some semblance of interaction, because that's what's missing.
Yeah. It's the like you said, I totally think it's tied to relationship and communication, and the fact that we can we know each other at least a little bit. And even in our case, like I know that there are certain ways or preferences that you would have, and I would have different preferences, and we've had to talk about those. And there's been times where we've had to have some really good, serious
We
heart-to-heart
have talked about
conversations.
those.
And we have. And again, we may still not see perfectly eye to eye on things, but at least there's a contextual understanding. And I think how do we get that in a way that makes it seem it can't be the same? I get that, but how do we get that in a way that we have some sort of two-way communication or relationship, so that those churches, particularly that a good number, not all of them, but a good number of that data was larger or growing churches, that I think is disproportionately heard in a negative fashion. So anyway, that's helpful. I think how can we continue to have these conversations and relationship? How do we know that larger growing churches are still being heard in our day to day, are things I still ponder and think about.
Yeah, I mean, so just as an example, one of the things I've not done, and I was actually talking to a large church guy in Texas, good friend of mine, and kind of like, you know what, I need to come to your large church gathering and actually just hang out and spend some time, get to know guys. I think though, and I'm going to put a little of the burden back on you guys, and that is, you guys, because I mean, again, Red Letter, or I mean the challenge stuff, your author stuff, your dad stuff, your husband stuff, your church stuff, I mean, all those kinds, your speaking stuff, like how do you carve out time to connect with people that, I mean, we by nature carve out time with folks that think the same way we do and have similar interests, right? And so there's a part of me that would say, as large church guys, how are you seeking to have that special invitation to say, come spend, can we have a little bit of your time, recognizing again that, the synodical president has 8,000 people that want a piece of the pie, right? So.
Yeah, no, that's super fair, and I totally agree. And one of the things I'm learning in this with the survey and with the conversations, even this season, is it has brought me out of my comfort zone a little bit. And I have had a couple of conversations with people that I probably wouldn't have talked with, and strategically at the same time going down to seminary with a new SMP student, serving as his mentor, and sitting in class and being back at seminary. I'm like, you know what? It is a really great institution here, and it was I wouldn't say perfect gold standard experience residential for me, but it was a good experience. And so of course I want to support that. And do I need to beef up, my knowledge and understanding of the confessions? Yeah, I'd love that. Like all of that's like, so it's a journey, but I think you're totally right. How do we get in rooms with others that are different from us? And for us in this, Nebraska district, it's like, how do we still maintain relationship in our circuit? That's where there are a couple churches like us, but there are a lot that aren't like us. And yet I feel like all those guys, if you were to talk to me about them, I'd have good things to say about them, and maybe they would about me, maybe they wouldn't, but at least they know me, they know our context, and they can understand and even push back. I do remember at one of the circuit meetings, there was, we have baptism Sundays at King of Kings, and there was someone asking us about why we do it that way, and why we talk about remembering your baptism in public, and why is that a public thing? And to hear our answers on that, we were able to kind of give an answer to that. And though they probably wouldn't go that format, I think that theologically they understood where we came from, and we know one another. And so anyway, I think what President Snow and I won't put words in your mouth, so you can disagree if this is not where we're coming to. I think it just gets back to really basic stuff. Get to know one another, communicate, try to be in relationship with one another, and talk things out when we're seeing this. Because I'm sensing the same stuff about those internal divisions, and I think we're always going to have them, but we can handle them heck of a lot better than the way we've been doing.
Yeah, I'm going to just poke the bear a bit. It's like, this is an overgeneralization, but my experience has been a lot of the large church guys are so busy with a large church, they don't often take the time for the larger church. And so that's, I think, is part of that challenge. And I think the church misses your voice when you're not at and I'm not saying you, because you come to the pastors' conferences, I see you there regularly, but I don't see that with all the large church guys. And I think that's a disadvantage to the church, because we need to hear that voice. And I would say, from my perspective, the large church is underrepresented in the larger work of the synod.
Yeah, and I think it could be a chicken and egg thing of what happened first. Did the large churches leave, or were their voices not respected or heard? And so like I'll just take my ball and go somewhere else. But I think either way, like however we got here, if we want to move forward together, we've got to engage.
We got to break the
large
pattern.
Church pastors, we got to be involved, not just our large church network stuff, which you should do that because that's going to be the most like-minded people. But to go to circuits and districts and to be, I'm totally for that. And so, hey, let's talk about another fun topic: raising and forming pastors.
Hey,
it's something that everybody in our denomination totally agrees on. But obviously, there's great concern about raising up pastors and church workers because that really does represent the leaders and probably the future of our church body. And so I just love to hear, kind of in Nebraska, are you seeing certain strategies working to identify and equip the next generation of leaders, or what are the big gaps that in your district that we still need to fill?
Again, I mean, it just comes back to the basics. Are we planting seeds, the seed of that thought into people's minds, and not just young? I mean, obviously, we're learning now that it's in that third and fourth grade that we need to be planting that seed, letting as kids start to think about what they're going to do with their life. Some of them are already kind of. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do after I got out of seminary, much less when I was in third grade. But but a lot of kids are kind of they're already shaping and forming kind of some of those thoughts early on. But what I'm seeing the most is where either workers or congregation leaders are starting to identify kind of spiritual gifts in their local context. And whether that's encouraging someone to go residential to seminary or whatever, or whether that's SMP, whatever the route might be, I think what we're seeing is most critical is people that are looking for those spiritual distinctives, and then really planting that seed of encouragement and continuing to lift that up. It's not a quick decision. It's something that's formed over time, and that takes a lot of cultivation. And so congregations, I think, that are doing it well, pastors that are doing it well, are guys are those places where they're planting and cultivating that field.
That's good. And I think it starts, like you said, with identifying how are you uniquely gifted, and how are the people in our church uniquely gifted. And we at Red Letter actually have a free spiritual gifts test if anybody wants to take it. It's at spiritualgifts.me. It's one we created, and we looked at all the spiritual gift tests of the last 25, 30 years and found that they were all the exact same, and all of them were written before the internet was a thing. And so we took some of the best questions, added some of our own to kind of bring it a little bit more into 2025 world. And so if anybody wants to take that, your whole church can take it. Spiritualgifts.me. They'll get the results from that. But I love that.
Do that right on the internet. Just
right on. I mean, there's some things you can do on the internet these days.
Wow, what do you know?
I'm a big proponent of it.
Look at you thinking outside the box.
This whole conversation we're having now, it's going to be on this thing called the internet. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, it's crazy. So if you could speak to every Nebraska congregation at once, which you do get to every now and then, by the way,
there you go.
But what would your call to action like for the next 10 years of ministry in the district be? Like what's the main focal point or two that like you're really going to be honing in on in the Nebraska district?
The big thing for me, kind of in the remainder of my time as district president, are how do we increase the number of people in Bible study? As Lutherans, we believe in the authority and the power of the Word, and yet, on average, less than 10% of our adults are actually in a Bible study. And I don't need. I'm not just talking about kind of like an academic study, but any kind of like, how are they, folks, other than worship, and I'm not demeaning worship. I think going to church is important. I think sermons are good, right? Yeah. But your faith is not challenged and is not is not developed in the same way as it is when you're in a Bible study. So some kind of, just discipleship process, whatever that, whether that's a Bible study or a small group or, a discipleship group, whatever it might be. So adults engaging kind of in intentional faith formation. Secondly, and I think I kind of put them in this order because I think the second part of that is, I need to also be forming my family. So family ministry, I think, is kind of like, it's right at the same level, but sometimes folks don't know how to help disciple their family because they don't know how to disciple themselves. Yeah. And then, of course, reaching outside the home in touching the lives of others. So whether it's Everyone is Witness, or whether it's joining Jesus on the Mission, or Lutheran Hour Ministries has some really good resources as well. There's just, even some of your challenge stuff, right, is, serving and, all those kinds of things that are a part of the work that we do. So those three things I think are kind of on the front burner for me. But I think fundamental in all of that is, how are you putting into practice what you hear in the sermon or what you're learning in your study of God's Word? As Lutherans, I think we are, well, I don't think it's just Lutherans. I think in general, people love to learn, but they don't actually do, right? Yeah. So I can learn all I want about nutrition, but if I keep eating, Funyuns, that's all my nutritional knowledge isn't going to help me a whole lot. I can read all I want.
Funyuns? You go Funyuns? Is that your?
Well, not really. But I do like Funyuns. I'm kind of a little bit of the cheese. Cheetos. I'm a Cheetos. I like the deep fried Cheetos too. The ones that are really good for you. And then none of these baked chips. Nobody wants that.
Just go for it.
My point is, it's like as important as Bible study, family, devotions, family ministry, outreach. If I'm not actually changing what my current poor habits, good habits, don't change those. Go to work, go to worship, receive the Lord's Supper. But in addition to that, how am I actually applying and practicing what I'm learning? And too often we like information accumulation as opposed to life transformation.
Yeah, that's really good. And obviously that's super our heart at Red Letter is let's not just keep these words of Jesus on a page. Let's live them out in as many ways as possible. And I like the focus, for you on that next 10 years of it's really the people in our church. Obviously we need this for ourselves as pastors and leaders. So don't hear me wrong, but really, like, if we're going to see some great movement and great change, it's got to be happening inside of our church through the people that we minister to. Wrapping up here, a couple quick last things. A lot of people that took that survey, if they had one word to describe the LCMS, they gave them some options, and there was just a whole bunch of them that just chose frustrated, concerned. Some are not that way, so I don't want to pick everybody that way. But what would you say? What encouragement or hope would you give to LCMS leaders who deeply care about our church body, that are just kind of struggling with where it's at right now, and maybe even struggling to know what next steps would be?
Well, just fundamentally the promise, right? That, God is with us. All is not lost. There are incredible things happening in our church. There
Yeah.
are, I look just in the Nebraska district, and I just see some of the, we're going to have it's called Mission Ignition. It's coming up here later in September. And we've asked people, hey, if you need a little grant to kind of get something going, what would you like to do? And curiously, every one of the grant applications we received essentially if it's not youth focused, it's actually youth driven. So,
That's great.
we got a group of high school kids in Syracuse, Nebraska, where we don't actually have a church.
Oh, wow.
And these girls are saying, we'd like a grant to get Bible studies to pass out to our, to our friends and neighbors, and, that. And so, it's just crazy to see, these. So literally a 16-year-old high school girl wrote this grant.
I'm betting she gets it. I'm just going on the limb
I
here.
think you might make a good wager on that one. Right, yeah, so I think you could make some money on that bet. So well, I don't think anybody would take it, but I just think there are a lot of wonderful things happening, and in the midst of kind of looking, it's so easy to look at the problem and not look at kind of the future of where we can go. And so, again, a cliche, right? The gates of hell are not going to prevail against this. That means the gospel is actually not in defense.
You're right.
The gospel is on the offense. That we're going to break down the gates of hell. We're not, we're not protecting our gates. Anyway,
I love it.
and
Preach,
I
baby.
just think there's some really fantastic, even kind of in a lot of our rural areas, it's crazy to see all the cool things that are going on. And yeah, there are congregations that are struggling. There are congregations that, that may be closing, as we look into the future. But there's still a lot of great things going on out there. And some of it's happening in the larger churches, but some of it's happening in rural areas where, we got an SMP guy out in the Sandhills, and that dude is, they both a dual parish. They both doubled their attendance
Nice.
in the last 2 years. It's just crazy to see what God is doing, where we get out of His way and let the gospel have its way.
That's beautiful. I think that's awesome. Yeah, we can focus on so much of the negative stuff and the stuff that might make you feel frustrated or concerned. But when you look around with eyes of opportunity, and you'll see some amazing stories of God doing incredible things through our church body. We ask every guest kind of this question on the way out. It's ultimately a podcast. We want everybody to be a greater disciple of Jesus. And this obviously season we're focused on LCMS folks. But if there's one thing practically that anyone listening could do this week to be a greater disciple, what would you challenge them to do this week?
I suppose it kind of goes back to a little bit to what it's like, what's the next thing you're going to practice? Right. So kind of like do what you've been given, like so much of what frustrates me is what somebody else is doing that isn't what I wish they would,
Right.
But what am I doing? What have I been given, and what am I doing to move that ministry or that needle forward? what's the next thing that needs to challenge you, and how are you going to practice that? Because that change doesn't happen in an instant. It changes with practice over time.
It's good.
So,
love that.
Yeah, what are you going to practice?
Let's put those practices into play, baby.
There you go.
President Snow, Richard, anything you want to share that I didn't ask, or anything more you want to share?
I'm just, as we talk about, some of the challenges, some of the fires, all those kinds of things, God is good, and God is doing great things. And if you're a worker, especially, get out of your people's way. They've got ministry, and let them fly. Let them. The body of Christ it needs to have every part working, and that's, we need to be less worker dependent, and more, body go free kind of thing.
Amen. Love it. Hey, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
District website, emails, probably don't try Facebook, because I only get on once every 2 weeks. So just my email, riches@ndlcms.org, and the district office phone number. I'm much more of a phone conversation guy than I am anything else. So
good for you. Still hanging on to that. I love that.
I know. Yeah. So yeah, I don't tweet. I don't Insta. I don't ZX or whatever it is. Now I can't say. I'm still tweeting. I'm
Well, maybe a few of us Nebraska pastors can come up with some deep fake account for you, and we'll get called in and maybe aspire to put out for you.
There you go. Pretend to be me, Zach. That'd be great.
That's all I want in life, just to be more like you, sir.
There you go.
Awesome, President. Thanks so much for joining us on the Red Letter Disciple. Truly appreciate being in ministry with you, and thanks for doing what you do. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you. God bless.
Cool. Super honored to have my district president, Richard Snow, on the podcast. He's also a friend, and grateful for our conversations, grateful that we can talk openly and honestly with one another, and just thankful for his words on how to handle conflict better. And sometimes it really is just going back to the basics. Super grateful for his ideas about the importance of adults, and those, not just adults, but teenagers, all of us in regular Bible study, and how important it is as pastors that we equip the people of our churches to do ministry alongside of us. If you want to connect with him or any of the links he talked about, any of the resources, or if you want to check out our newest 40-day challenge, Giving Challenge, you can go to redletterpodcast.com. A lot of people have been asking, what's next on Red Letter Disciple? So I want to give you an update on that. And so to get that update, we're going to be posting a YouTube video very shortly later this week that's going to talk about the future direction of what's next for Red Letter Disciple. I think you're going to love it. So can't wait to continue to serve you guys, and we'll see you on the other side and for the next episode of the Red Letter Disciple. So make sure you don't miss it by subscribing or following, and then that way it'll automatically pop up. God bless you, and have a great day.